Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to another magical episode of It's All Magic. 'Tis I, your host, Devin Rochelle Hine, astrologer and life coach, and as always, I am utterly thrilled to be here with you today. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in, whether you are watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am here with you, and I'm happy to be here with you. So before we dive into today's topic, which is a very exciting one, it will touch on, is astrology real? It will touch on fate versus free will. It will touch on my astrology journey and my experiences through an astrological lens. Before we get into all of that good stuff, as always, I want to take a moment to take a couple of deep breaths because I think we all desperately need them all of the time. So no matter what you're doing, whether you are on a walk right now, driving, cleaning dishes, folding laundry, let's just take 3 deep breaths together. Now, my favorite breathwork technique, if you've been with me for a long time, you probably know it is bee's breath, where we breathe in through the nose and then we seal our lips and hum out our full exhale as long and slowly as we can. Now, today I want to do a slight variation of that because if you're watching this, you'll probably see I'm in a very different environment right now. I'm currently sitting right by the beach in Charleston, South Carolina. I can feel the beach breeze on my skin. The sun is shining. The palm trees are flowing in the wind. So I want to do bee's breath inspired by the ocean waves. So what we're going to do today, we'll breathe in through the nose, and then we are going to shh. So pretend that you are shushing someone that needs to quiet down. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to take that shh as long and slow as we can. So let's just do 3 of them together. If you would like to close your eyes right now, you're welcome to. If not, it'll still work just as powerfully. So go ahead and empty out from your previous breath here. And then go ahead and breathe in through the nose. And beautiful. Round 2. Inhale through the nose. And round 3. Inhale through the nose. And go. Empty out all the way. Then breathe in normally through the nose. And open your mouth and sigh it out. Oh, yummy, yummy, yummy. I absolutely love doing those breathing techniques with you all. I'll be honest, even though I have taught breathwork for many, many years, I often forget to do it myself. So every time I get to sit down with you and breathe, it's just a highlight of my day as well. So let's get into today's topic, which is astrology, fate versus free will, my astrology journey, and so much more. Now, the reason why I want to talk to you about this today, in case you don't know, I work as a professional astrologer. Now, I combine my work as an astrologer with my many, many years of working as a life coach. So I like to call myself a cosmic life coach. And this work not only is the bread and butter of my life, it is like the love of my life, especially if Cal didn't exist, this would be the love of my life. But it also has changed my worldview forever. And I want to talk about why. So I'll start from the lens, the vocal point of having come from the world of life coaching. Now, in the world of life coaching, there is this inherent belief that if you want something, if you want to change something, it is up to you to make it happen, to make the change, to be the person you want to be, to go after the job you want, to lose the weight. It is on us to do the work. Now, that kind of is correlated with the lens of free will. Now I'm gonna talk about both fate and free will, but now I come from a different standpoint as an astrologer, which is the idea that inherently what astrology is actually the study of the correlation between celestial bodies and earthly events. Now, if that is true, inherently, if astrology exists at any level, which I absolutely believe it does, especially after having looked at hundreds of charts and talking to people about their charts, then there has to be some level of fate operating in this world. So, life coaching is free will. You make the change if you want there to be a change. And then astrology operates from some baseline foundation of fate being at work here. So I am now in a really weird place of what do I believe in? Is it fate or is it free will? And is astrology real? So let's dive into it. I wanted to start with that baseline so you can understand where I'm coming from and you can understand where I blend the two in my work as a cosmic life coach. So I want to start by talking about fate for a second. Now, what exactly is fate? Well, fate comes from the Latin word fatum, which literally translates to that which has been spoken. So fate is destiny. It means that something has been written before it happens, written before it exists in reality. Now, some people love this concept, some people hate this concept, and some simply don't care. So wherever you're standing right now, I just want you to explore with me. I just want you to open your mind and see how you feel by the end of this episode. So let's say for a second that there's some aspect of fate. Now, I mentioned that some people love it and some people hate it. And this is the really interesting thing to me. I think the people who love it say, well, if there's fate, then I was destined to live this purpose, or I was destined to meet this wonderful love of my life that I've been married to for 25 years. I was destined to be the parent to this child. And so there's kind of this pride in this is my destiny. Then on the flip side, the people who hate it usually hate to think that, well, I have no say in the matter. If I have been dealt a pretty bad hand at life, let's say you really struggle with your health, or you weren't born into a loving family, or you have always struggled financially. So what that was just written in the stars for me, there's nothing I can do about it. And so I really understand both sides. I do. And I wanted to share both of those sides because I think there is merit in feeling both ways. But if one is true, then the other must be true. So let's talk for a second about Greek philosophy, because the idea of fate really does come from Greek philosophy, at least in the way that we think of it, especially as astrologers, especially astrologers like me who dabble in Hellenistic astrology, which comes from ancient Greece. So in Greek mythology, you have the three fates. Now, the three fates were these three women. I don't know if you call them goddesses. I don't really know what they are, if they're mortal. I don't think they're mortal. They're definitely immortal. But the three fates are the women who have been given the task of weaving the fate, weaving the destiny for all souls. So one of them represents birth, one represents life, and then the third represents death. And it is their task to ensure that everyone fulfills their destiny. Now, the interesting thing is that Zeus, who was the god of gods, was said to not even be above the fates. Now, what does that tell us? It means that at least in ancient Greece, they believed strongly in fate, and they believed that even the gods, even the strongest of gods like Zeus, could not alter their fate. They were below the fates. The fates ruled all. The fates had all power. Now, that is kind of at the extreme end. there's gotta be something in between, right? We have free will on one end, we have fate on the other, and there's a whole lot of gray area. Now, in ancient Greece, they also had kind of a sister philosophy to this idea of fate, and they went hand in hand. And I personally don't think you can emotionally cope with the idea of fate unless you know about this philosophy. So this sister philosophy is called Stoicism. Now, you've probably heard the word stoic, even if you haven't heard of Stoicism, that someone has kind of a stoic demeanor. That often means that they don't show much emotion. There's very little expression. Now, Stoicism had many different tenets. We'll not go into all of them here, but I want to introduce you to the idea of Stoicism so that as we explore this idea of fate versus free will, you have something that helps ground you in the sense that it's okay either way. If fate does exist, it's okay. If fate doesn't exist, it's okay. So that brings us to Stoicism. Now, in Stoicism, there's this idea that we should focus on what we can control and accept the things that we can't control. Now, again, because I said that Stoicism went hand in hand with this idea of fate, they had to accept that many things were outside of their control. And I will also say, spoiler alert, I believe this is true as well. Now, later on, we'll talk about, do I believe that it's fully fate? Do I believe that there's any free will? And we will discuss that. Second spoiler alert, I don't necessarily know if it's all fate. So I think there's some gray area here. But I think many things in life are outside of our control, and we have to accept that. So for those of you listening right now who say, fate literally does not exist at all, you're making this up, you're crazy, this is just a stupid podcast episode, then hear me out for 1 second, because I will take the most basic concept right now and show you how it could be fate. You did not choose to be born into the family that you were born into. So right there, you got fate. So whether or not there is a reason behind that, there's a purpose for everything, whether or not you believe that, there was something outside of your control that you just were born into. And so that idea alone goes hand in hand with this idea of fate, that some things were just written. Remember what fatum means, that which has been spoken. So you had no say in the matter. So within Stoicism, we have to focus on what we can control and then accept the things that we can't control. And Stoicism really is here to teach us inner resilience, emotional equanimity, and to live a life of purpose, no matter the hand of cards you got dealt. So again, going back to this idea of the emotional equanimity, that comes from a place of surrender. If something is out of my control, maybe I just ride the waves of fate rather than pushing and forcing and efforting. And I will also say, from my own experience in life, there have been certain things that I have forced and forced and forced, and no matter how hard I tried, which I also have to proudly say, I tried pretty freaking hard, it did not happen. And I have now come, after years of studying astrology and working with many clients, I've come to a place of thinking, maybe it wasn't meant to happen. So right there, you have some baseline idea of fate. So now I want to go back to this idea of free will for a second, because we've started to explore fate. Later, I'll give you some examples, potential evidence of fate, if you will. But I want to explore the other side as well. Now, with free will, I understand the reason why people want to believe in free will or even fully in free will. It comes from this human sense of independence that I did it on my own. I can do anything I set my mind to. I can make things happen. I can force things into existence. It's up to me. And while that is an incredibly inspiring idea, and it's very much in line with the ideas of manifestation, you envision the life you want and suddenly you're living it, there's also a heavy weight to it. Because this is what happens when you fully believe in free will and only free will. So if you are successful in life, if you are living the life of your dreams, congratulations, that was all you're doing. But if you have not been successful in life, or if you're not living the life of your dreams, that's on you, dude. That was all you're doing. Now, how does that feel? I personally don't think that feels very good. And so it really leads me to believe that maybe there's some combination of the two. And I'm not the only one who believes that there's a combination of the two. There's actually a very famous movie character that you may have heard of who believes that fate and free will may just happen to go hand in hand. And that character is Forrest Gump. Now, I wrote down one of his iconic quotes because I think that this sums it up beautifully. He says, "I don't know if we each have a destiny or if we're all just floating around accidental like on a breeze, but I think maybe it's both. Maybe both are happening at the same time." So I would have to agree with Forrest Gump because something else that I have alluded to a few times is this idea of manifestation and visualization. And even though I told you at the beginning, as a spoiler alert, that I do strongly lean towards the fate side of the spectrum at this point in my life, with my experience as an astrologer, there are a few holdups to that. There are a few obstacles to that idea. So I want to introduce those ideas, the reasons why I believe there's some sort of idea of free will, before I take you on this journey of fate and almost what I like to call evidence of fate. So here are my thoughts on free will and manifestation. So I have been in the world of manifestation for many years, even when I was working as a health coach and solely as a life coach and as a breathwork facilitator and a yoga teacher. I used concepts of visualization and changing your energy and raising your energetic vibration, raising your frequency to manifest. I used that all of the time with my clients and with myself. And here's the thing. I think it works to a certain extent. So this is where things get tricky. And I also tell my clients all the time, I don't have all the answers. I too am just a human who is reading patterns. I'm collecting data. I'm talking to hundreds of people. I am studying birth charts, which I refer to as soul blueprints. So I'm doing a lot of research in the field, but I'm still just a human. I don't have the ultimate vantage point to be able to see how all of this works. So when I talk about that, I think there's some aspect of visualization, manifestation that works to a point. It's this. I think that when we do self-work to almost become the future versions of ourselves before we're fully there, and to bring ourselves into an emotional set point and an energetic frequency or vibration of our future selves, I have a theory that it can speed up timelines. Now, that might sound crazy, but this also goes hand in hand with this idea of fate. So let's say, for example, that you are fated for great success as a podcaster. Let's say that. So it is somehow written in the stars that you will speak to mass amounts of people, that you will inspire them, you will imbue them with hope and positivity, you will enlighten them, illuminate, you will teach, you will educate, you will entertain. So that's written in the stars. But unless you pick up the microphone, you upload the videos and the audio files, and you bring yourself into an energetic, emotional state of abundance where you already believe you are that person, you are that podcaster, you are that teacher, then it's either not gonna happen or it's gonna take a long time. Now, I personally feel like that which is fated for us will always happen to a certain extent. But it is up to us to collaborate with the universe, to partner with the stars, to partner with the planets, to actually make it happen. And to happen on a timeline that we are happy with, or perhaps that we are proud of. So for those of you who want to say, I did it on my own, I worked really hard, I don't doubt you for a second. In fact, I am one of those people who has often worked far harder than I needed to. And yet I still feel like that is simply a collaboration, a co-authoring of the story with the planets, with the universe. That there is some timeline, some destiny fated for you, and it's up to you to bring yourself into that timeline. But I think that with the manifestation tools, we can speed that timeline up. Now, this is just a theory for now. This is just a hypothesis. So let me know your thoughts. If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts just in general, fate versus free will. Feel free to message me on Instagram at Devin_Rochelle_ or email me, whatever. I want to know, but I'm just sharing some of my thoughts here. Now, I also think this is my second obstacle with fate versus free will. Now, it's less of an obstacle. The first one, which is the idea of manifestation and visualization, I do feel like that's where we really have some say. This second one is less about us having say and more about the fact that fate isn't as black and white as we think it is. Now, this is the second idea, which is that there are so many different manifestations of what is fated for us. So for example, when I give a birth chart reading, it is typically pretty easy for me to see when that person's parents are divorced. Now, I know that sounds crazy because especially in pop astrology, we think that we can only learn about ourselves. It's all about our personality, our psyche in a birth chart. And I will just tell you right now that is not true at all. You can glean a lot of information about fated events, about the life circumstances, about the childhood, the upbringing, the parents, the siblings, the friends, the partner, the career, the boss. All sorts of information is in your birth chart. Now, going back to this idea of me seeing that the parents are divorced, there have been a handful of times when I have brought up this concept and I found out, of course, first the client is usually like, what? How did you even guess that? But I've then found out in a handful of cases that the parents didn't get divorced, but they strongly dislike each other and they live parallel lives, or sometimes they're not divorced, but one has actually moved out. So that is just an example of how there are different manifestations of something that has literally been written in the stars. Now, another example is that there is another signature in the birth chart that often shows that that person's father died young. Now, in a handful of circumstances, the father didn't literally die young, but there was some sort of physical or emotional distance between the father and my client. So you can see that it can sometimes be a very literal manifestation of the father was not present because they were dead, and other times it was that they were not present because they either had to travel a lot for work. Sometimes the father struggled with mental health or substance abuse issues, and they were not emotionally or mentally or energetically present with the child. So there are examples like that. Now, other times, there are manifestations of something that could be dark and heavy, but the person has transmuted that destiny into something really beautiful. So, for example, I've worked with many clients who have, and I won't name the placements here because those of you who say, oh my God, I have that, I don't want you to freak out because I have to look at the whole chart. But I've worked with a handful of clients who have a few planetary placements that could clue me into the fact that there's been a lot of darkness in their life. Now, very frequently, those kinds of birth charts show clients who have struggled with really deep depression, substance abuse issues, addiction, codependency in relationships. There are sometimes many deaths in that person's life. So there can be extremely dark themes, but a few of them have transmuted that and they have actually become healers. They have become therapists. They have become the ones who work with the addicted, the ones who work with the codependent. And so they have found a way to take what might have been their destiny, their fate, and in many of these cases, they first had to live the darker manifestation. But even for those who didn't, they were able to transmute it. They were able to alchemize it into gold. And this is also where that idea of manifestation and visualization comes in. Does visualization, does manifestation, does self-work at all change our fate? Maybe. I don't know. So I would love to hear from you. I think I will spend a lifetime of data collecting around these ideas because I'm fascinated by the human experience and I want to better understand it, but I only have the vantage point of a human being. So these are my thoughts so far. So before I go into my quote unquote evidence for fate, or just a few different ideas for you to play with, I just want to recap what we've talked about. So we talked about how, as a life coach, I really worked with the idea of free will. As an astrologer, I work a bit more with the idea of fate, but I blend the two as a cosmic life coach. So I believe that there's some combination of the two. Granted, I've also told you I lean more towards the fate end, which we're about to delve into, but I think there's some idea of free will. And the two reasons for that I told you, one is that I do believe that self-work, manifestation, visualization, meditation, changing your energetic vibration, changing the state of your mind, your beliefs, I think that actually has an impact. I think it changes things for the better. So that's the first thing. And the second is that there are so many manifestations of what is fated. And so I still think that can play into the idea of fate, but there's some sort of gray area there that maybe we can alchemize it. Maybe we can enhance it, improve it, make it better in some way. So let's go on to this idea of fate and some of my personal examples and evidence of what I think is fated. Now, without trying, this is also going to sound like evidence of astrology. I am not trying to prove anything here. I am just trying to share these examples, share my experiences, but I also have to say as a caveat, not a caveat, maybe a side note, because we're on the topic of, is astrology real? I have to say, the short answer is abso-freaking-lutely. No question about it. And I know so many people out there say, I don't believe in astrology. I'm a person of science. And I say, I believe in astrology. I'm a person of science. So, as a data collector, as someone who has studied this for years and analyzed a whole lot of charts while talking to the person who owns that chart, I can say with every fiber of my being, you guys, there is something crazy accurate about this astrology thing. So if you're curious, if you want to explore your birth chart at all, please, check out my website. I offer readings. I would love to just have you message me if you have any questions, but you can find my website at devinrochelle.com. So definitely give it a go for yourself if you're unsure, if you're curious, if you want to dabble. I'm here to be your cosmic messenger on your journey. Now, I digress. Back to examples of fate. Now that everyone here believes for a second, even if you just hold it temporarily in your mind, that astrology is real, that there is absolutely something written in the stars, let's talk about fate in astrology. Now, the first one I'll talk about is a personal example that is very near and dear to my heart, because this is something that I did not know about. I didn't know that this existed in my birth chart until just a few years ago. And when I found out about this thing, I sobbed. Now, it wasn't sobbing out of sadness. It was sobbing out of pure awe, out of feeling so seen and recognized and understood, and quite honestly, sobbing out of the idea of, holy cow, there has to be some level of fate in this universe. Now, what this thing is relates to the 9th house in astrology. Now, for those of you who don't even know what a house is, fear not, I shall explain. So you've probably heard of the zodiac signs, of which there are 12 in the birth chart. Now, there's also something equally important in the birth chart, which is called the houses. Now, the signs represent the energy or the way in which a planet manifests, and the 12 houses in the birth chart show where in your life that energy manifests itself. So the zodiac sign is the how, and the house is the where. So I will give you an example. Someone may have, let's say, what is a good one? Let's say someone has, okay, I have a friend who has this. The sun in Sagittarius in the 4th house. Now, what is the sun in astrology? Just shorthand right now, the sun is the character, role, or avatar that you came to play in life. It is your core personality, your core essence, your core energy. Now, the sun being in the sign of Sagittarius makes that person really direct. It makes that person, quite honestly, really fun. Often pretty adventurous, very sarcastic. They love to have a good time. They love people. They love hosting. They love parties. But the 4th house is a house that represents home and family. When people have the sun in the 4th house, regardless of the zodiac sign that the sun is in, that person tends to be a little bit more of a homebody. And in fact, this friend of mine, who is this Sagittarius, who you would think of is fully outgoing and is always on an airplane and is always on to the next adventure, her sun in the 4th house manifests as her acting like a Sagittarius within the home. So for example, she loves to host parties, but she really only likes doing it in the comfort of her own home. Another example is that she is incredibly funny, super sarcastic, but only with her family, with the people she feels really comfortable with. So that's just an example for you. And of course, it gets far more complicated. That is just the first layer of astrology in a birth chart, which is why it is not general. When people tell me, oh, astrology is just generalized, you know, you could say it about anyone, I say you literally don't know what astrology is. But I digress again. That is to give you a little snippet of what are the houses. So there are 12 different houses, and each one shows an area of life where that energy manifests itself. Now, the 9th house is what I will talk about for my own personal example. The 9th house is the house that represents foreign travel, especially long-term travel, foreign languages, obsession with other cultures, other peoples, philosophy, spirituality, religion, writing, especially publishing your writing, and teaching, being almost some sort of spiritual guide or guru or sage kind of situation. Now, the 9th house is near and dear to my heart because I have most of my planets in the 9th house. And my whole life, I always thought of myself as, well, I'm a Leo. And that's all I knew for most of my life until I discovered astrology. And while I definitely feel like a Leo, it wasn't until I discovered this whole mass of planets that I have in the 9th house, which does not include my Leo sun, by the way, that I fully felt like astrology knew me. I fully felt seen. Because when someone has many planets in the ninth house, which is called a stellium, by the way, a stellium is when someone has 3 or more planets in either one sign or one house of the birth chart. Now, I have a stellium in the ninth house, and when people have a stellium in the ninth house, there is this inherent love of, obsession with other cultures, foreign lands, foreign languages, foreign people. There is this admiration, respect, obsession with spirituality, religion, philosophy. There is kind of this teacher quality to that person. They just love to share their ideas, especially the ones that they have actually gotten by traveling near and far, both in the mind and physically, and then they share that experience with others. Now, if you're sitting here listening to this podcast, or you know me well, or you have been following the journey for a long time, you might say, wow, that really resonates with who Devin is. And it absolutely does. Now, for me personally, I wanted to share just a few things that have happened throughout my life to show you how crazy spot on this is. So long before I ever even knew about the ninth house, I didn't even know that existed, I embodied the qualities of a ninth house stellium. So, for example, when maybe I started at age 10 or so. When I was 10, 11, 12, 13, I did Hebrew tutoring to prepare for my bat mitzvah. For those who don't know, my mother is Jewish, my father is Christian, and I was raised in this beautifully colorful, very open-minded interfaith home. But we were raised, well, I was going to say raised Jewish. We were actually kind of raised with both, but we always knew that it would be an option to have a bat mitzvah if my sister and I so choose. So when we got to bat mitzvah age, which is, I believe, 12 for girls and 13 for boys, my sister and I both started private Hebrew tutoring. And in my Hebrew tutoring, I remember very early on, my Hebrew tutor, who is also going to be the rabbi who would kind of, officiate my bat mitzvah, facilitate. She pulled my mom aside and said, I think your daughter Devin will be a translator one day. She has a very natural knack with foreign language. She's picking it up really quickly. So I was 10 years old learning Hebrew, a very different language than English. And it's funny because little did that Hebrew tutor and rabbi know that I would indeed one day become a translator. I see myself as a translator of a foreign language as an astrologer because I study birth charts where most people look at it and they see these really weird hieroglyphics and these symbols and they don't understand a single thing. And I get to be the cosmic interpreter. That's why I call myself a cosmic messenger. So it's really weird that she saw this knack for interpreting, translating, working with people. And here I am as a translator of the stars. So that was one thing. Then when it became closer to my bat mitzvah itself, my parents said, okay, so Devin, your older sister, had the huge bat mitzvah party when she had her bat mitzvah 2 years ago. Do you want the huge party with all of your friends, lots of dancing, or do you want something different? We could go on a family trip. We could do something else. And I, at age 12, where most girls, most people in general would probably say, oh my gosh, friends. I want the big party with the friends. I want all my friends to see. I said, screw the party with friends. I want to leave the country. So we ended up going on my first big international trip. It was a cruise, I guess, kind of through the Mediterranean. It was like Spain and Italy and France. It was incredible. And I just find it really funny that already at such a young age, when given the option between the big party with the friends or something a little unconventional, I said, screw the conventional path. I'm leaving the country. So already that was happening. Then later in school, at the end of middle school, my particular middle school had the opportunity to go on one of two different trips. The more popular of the trips was a trip to Washington, D.C. And this is where, all of the kids went to D.C. and it was this huge thing. They took tons of pictures, they'd put it on social media. And then a very small group of people would go to England and Ireland. And of course, what did I choose? I said, screw Washington, D.C. Why would I go there when I can leave the country and explore something totally outside of my horizons, when I can explore a different life philosophy and meet foreign people? I just had this obsession with it. So I chose to go to England and Ireland with this small group of people, and it also was one of the best trips of my lifetime. Now, another thing that happened is that, especially looking back at these pubescent years, in terms of the crushes that I had on boys, I kid you not when I say every boy I ever liked, except for maybe one that I can think of right now, they were all foreign boys. The first crush I ever had, at least that I have conscious awareness of, was a Mexican boy in my class. And I really liked him when I was maybe 8. And I wrote a song for him in Spanish. Now, granted, I was 8 years old. I had never taken a foreign language class. I did not know Spanish. And yet I somehow used the internet and I learned how to say, I love you in Spanish. So I wrote this Mexican boy a really embarrassing song in Spanish. And to answer your question, no, I actually don't think I ever sang it to him. Maybe I should now. I can sing you a snippet. It went a little like this. So how you say Spanish, or how you say I love you in Spanish, is te quiero, which literally translates to I want you. So at 8 years old, I was trying to say I want you to this Mexican boy, and it went like this. Te quiero, ooh la la, te quiero, te quiero. So you get the gist. That was my Spanish song for my Mexican crush. Then my first boyfriend was a French boy. Both of his parents had immigrated from France. He spoke French and English, and I loved his Frenchness. We used to exchange poetry. He would drop off roses at my house, and we were 10 years old. So the stereotype of the French being romantic, based on my personal case study with a sample size of 1, the answer is yes, they are. Then, in high school, I liked all of the foreign exchange students. There were literally 2 German exchange students that I really liked. One I went to multiple dances with. So I rest my case. You now know all about my crushes from my prepubescent and pubescent days. But I just had this natural affinity for the foreigners. Then at the end of high school, I still remember senior year, we had this big award ceremony, and certain students got awards for certain subjects like science or English or whatever. And I was given the foreign language award because I had taken Spanish all of my years in high school. I had done AP Spanish, the AP exams, and I freaking loved it. I love languages, you guys. Whether that language is the language of the stars, or it is au revoir, or gracias, whatever it is, I'm obsessed. So that also happened. Here's a few more, just to hammer home the point. I hope this story time is fun. It's honestly warming my heart to be able to share this part of my soul with you because it feels so important to who I am. When I was a kid, I used to listen to Disney songs in French because I loved Disney, but I especially loved Disney songs in foreign languages. And as I just told you, I studied Spanish. But no, it wasn't enough. I had to learn Disney songs in a language I didn't know. And I would memorize these songs in French. And to this day, I still don't know how to speak French or pronounce those words properly, but it did not matter. So I always learned Disney songs in French. And when I was in high school, I redecorated my childhood bedroom for a long time. It had been neon yellow, neon orange, and neon lime green. It was beach themed. It was warm and wonderful and colorful. But I got to a point where I outgrew those seashells, and I went to something very aligned. I went to a bedroom that was Paris, London, and international travel themed. So all of the artwork was Eiffel Towers, Big Ben, some sort of big British clock, but my actual bedspread was old newspaper clippings from newspapers all around the world in different languages, and it was passports. So again, in case I didn't yet hammer home this point, there was this weird obsession with other languages and cultures and countries. So that was what my bedroom was, and this is perhaps the craziest part of all, just to close out this part on my ninth house stellium, is that, as I just mentioned, my bedroom was mainly like London and Paris themed, so England and France. And I just learned earlier this year, I did not know this, which is almost embarrassing, but my name is Devin Rochelle. Rochelle is my middle name. And both of those names are names of places in England and France. Devon is a place in England, spelled exactly like mine. And there's a place in France called La Rochelle. Now, this is crazy because there's this belief that parents have almost divine inspiration when naming their children. And I feel that that might be true. Now, that's just kind of a fun idea, believe it or not. But the fact that I was named foreign places, literally England and France, and then I was born with this ninth house stellium. Of course, my parents had no idea about that. They did not know about the ninth house or any house at all. And here I am, obsessed with other places and cultures and languages. And it has now manifested as my husband and I living abroad. I mean, we are constantly leaving the country. We feel so called to learn every other language, to communicate with international folks near and far. And even where I've been living for the last 6 months, my husband and I have been staying with my parents in Huntington, West Virginia. And my two best friends are, of course, two international students. So one is Serbian and one is French. So even that, and also on that note, now that I think of it, all of my friends, even from my childhood, were foreign. Usually at least one of their parents was from another country. So I rest my freaking case, but I wanted to drone on and on about that for two reasons. One, to show a really important piece of myself that I feel like I haven't gotten to fully express in this way. And two, to show that there is something fated, you guys. Because I'm telling you, my sister, who grew up in the exact same home I did, with the exact same parents, the same environments, she could honestly care less about foreign travel. She's not a language person. She likes America and English. And even though she's probably down for a trip, she honestly prefers to keep her roots down in the dirt. Whereas I am like, rip those roots out, let's go. In fact, I had a friend astrologer give me a little reading a couple years ago. And the first thing she said when she saw my ninth house stellium, she said two things. The first was, oh, you will probably live abroad. And of course, at the time, I hadn't even begun that journey. And I just smiled because that was my lifelong goal. Since I was really young, I always wanted to live abroad. And the second thing she said was, you, my friend, are a teacher. You are a spiritual guide. You are a podcaster. You are a host. You are a facilitator. And of course, I just smiled because already I had begun that journey. So that is a little bit about my ninth house stellium, but there's something else I want to share with you that is just part of this fate. So what we've been talking about with ninth house stellium is this idea that there's something about your personality, something about your psyche, your interests, your longings, your desires, your dreams that is fated. But what about time? What about your timeline? Ha ha. Well, I'm glad you asked, my friends. There is absolutely a fated component to time. In fact, in my readings, that is one of the things that tends to lead to the most jaw drops when I ask about certain years in someone's life, or I talk about something that that person is probably feeling right now or is stepping into, and then either in the session or later when that thing comes to fruition, I get a message saying, oh my gosh, how did you know? So there's absolutely fated timelines. And just to finish my personal story, I'll tell you one of mine. So one of my favorite timing techniques in all of astrology is called secondary progressions. And it's actually a technique that I plan on teaching soon. So if you are interested in learning when I launch that course, whenever it will be, you can definitely go to my website, devinrochelle.com, and make sure that you have signed up to be on my mailing list so that you are the first to know when it's launched. You can get the early bird discount and all that good stuff. So secondary progressions is this really cool symbolic timing technique in astrology. And essentially what I'm looking at is that all of the planets in your birth chart, which appear stagnant in the birth chart, they are all actually progressing around the wheel, around the zodiac as you grow older. And of course, as they each progress, they are changing your personality, your interests, your choices, your motivations. And I want to, for a moment, pay attention mainly to the moon. Now, I mentioned this is happening with all of the planets, but with the moon changes signs in the symbolic timing technique around every 2 to 2.5 years. And it is really freaking creepy and crazy to see how this impacts our choices and our motivations in different chapters and phases of life. So this has been really weird for me. You'll see this will kind of end up in a little ninth house situation, which we'll get to, but I just want to walk you through a couple of these changes. So when this secondary progressed moon for me was in the sign of Scorpio, which is often associated with some darker themes like heartbreak or sadness or shadow work or working with your own inner demons or tending to things that have happened in the past or healing your inner world. It's really kind of deep emotional work. When my moon was in Scorpio, this was in college, I dealt with the worst heartbreak of my life. And while I was going through that, not only was I really struggling with my mental health, in perfect honesty, and I was crying a lot of the time, which is very scorpionic, but I became obsessed with poetry. And poetry is truly the language of the heart. I mean, what is more scorpionic or what is more water sign in nature than poetry? So I was really deep in the feels, as we say. But not only that, Scorpio is also one of the most determined probing signs that exist. When I say probing, I mean they are masterful researchers, detectives, surgeons. They go really deep and they don't stop till they have an answer. And I bring this up because when I was going through my heartbreak and crying on the floor and reading poetry in classic Scorpio form, I also started seeking answers as to why me and this person, which, spoiler alert, that person is now my husband. That's a whole other story. Why we were potentially not compatible. Also, I have to say, it turns out we are very compatible. But at the time of this heartbreak, I was seeking answers. And where, my friends, did I seek these answers? In astrology, which I only had a very basic foundation at that point in time. And this like blew open the doors of my world. So I went down deep in the rabbit hole of astrology, and I discovered, of course, the ninth house. I discovered the sun, the moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all of the things that I never knew existed. I thought I was just a Leo, and it turns out I'm not just a Leo, and you're not just a whatever you are. There is so much more to it. So that really changed my world, but it was very, very scorpionic in nature. Those years were hard. It was heartbreak. It was poetry. It was crying. It was depression. It was rabbit hole. It was more introverted. It was crying on the floor in my apartment, which is very not like me, by the way. So that's what I'm saying. This secondary progressed moon really changes things. Then the moon moved into Sagittarius for a couple years. Now, Sagittarius, as I mentioned earlier, is a very fun, adventurous social sign. Sagittarius craves independence and freedom and wide open horizons and novelty and stimulation. And so I graduated college right around the time that my moon was in Sagittarius, and I did some of my biggest international trips that I had done so far. I went on my first solo trip internationally. I went to Bali. I ended up meeting some of my best friends in the world. Then later on, I went to Africa. I did a lot of international travel during my Sagittarius years, and I worked multiple jobs part-time because freedom was my number one priority. I also was doing a lot of teaching. I was taking a lot of classes, which is very Sagittarius in nature. And then, guess what, you guys? My moon moved out of Sagittarius into Capricorn. And that changed my world completely. Because so far, in my adult years, I had been in signs that I was maybe more comfortable with based on my natal chart. Now, the Scorpio years, not so much. That was really challenging. But I have a lot of Sag kind of energy in my chart, just as an example. So the freedom, the exploration, the being social, the adventurous nature, the learning and teaching, that was very comfortable for me. But when my moon hit Capricorn, which is a very different energy, it's very practical, pragmatic, down to earth, grounded. It's not so much about novelty, it's about what do you have in the bank. It's not so much about what tomorrow holds, it's do you have enough money for today. So it's very much about having a role that grants you respect and financial abundance, and can you climb the ladder, and is it sustainable? And so for the first time in my life, and I also have to caveat this by saying I did not know about these transitions at the time. It's not like I knew that my moon was changing signs and then my life changed. I didn't know about any of this until years ago. So this was happening in its own time. So when my moon hit Capricorn, out of the blue, I was so unhappy with my entrepreneurial Sagittarius-like life. I was unhappy with the part-time jobs. I started craving security and stability, and I did not know what the heck was wrong with me. I was like, why am I changing my tune? What has happened? All I ever wanted was independence and freedom and to be an entrepreneur. And so in this time where I was very confused, very lost, I did what I thought I would never do based on my personality and my desires. I sought out a corporate job. So I interviewed for 6 months. I finally landed a job, and I worked that job for about a little over a year and a half. And then guess what? My moon moved out of Capricorn into Aquarius. And Aquarius is where I'm going to leave this story, because Aquarius for me in my chart is the 9th house. And the 9th house, as we said, is foreign travel, It is total independence. It is broadening your horizons. It is being the teacher. It is speaking. It is sharing. And what did I do when my moon changed from Capricorn, this very practical, security-driven sign, into one that is all about freedom, independence, breaking free from conventions, and going on your own path, one that might involve foreign travel and sharing your message? Well, I'll tell you what happened. I quit my job. I started this podcast. I put all of my belongings in storage and I fled the country. That is right. So I'm sorry if that sounds really annoying the way I'm saying it, but I'm trying to drive home this point. It is so wild. It is so wild how accurate this timing is. And while this is my own story, as I've said numerous times in this podcast, I've worked with so many clients who have the same story. For example, I literally had a client maybe 3 months ago, and I was looking at some of her secondary progressions, the symbolic timing technique, and I was checking out the orbit of her moon. And I saw that her moon had moved from Sagittarius to Capricorn to Aquarius. And I asked some questions along the way that might have kind of gone parallel to my own story, my own experience of these signs. And her jaw dropped. And it turned out when she moved from Sagittarius to Capricorn, from the freedom seeking to the security seeking, she too got a more stable, conventional job. And when her moon moved out of Capricorn into Aquarius, she quit her job and she left America. So I leave you with that. Whether you believe in fate, free will, or something in between is not up to me. It's up to you. And it's up to whatever allows you to live your most fulfilling, abundant life. If you want to know, if you want to believe that certain things are fated for you, certain things will just be in flow for you, and it's destined at the right time, believe that. And if you need to believe that it is entirely up to you, if that has served you well, that the work you put in is what you get out, cool. That works too. I'm sharing from my own perspective as an astrologer that there's something to fate, you guys. There is something in this world that is predestined. So as they say, especially in ancient Greece, they would say amor fati, which means love your fate. So whether you love your fate or you don't is up to you. But I want to leave you with a couple of quotes just to wind out or round out? I don't know how to say that. To close out this episode, I couldn't choose a quote, so I have a few, and I want you to choose your favorite. So I already told you amor fati, love your fate. But here are some uplifting ones for you. Here's one. What is for you will not go past you. So just remember that if there is some level of fate in this world and something is destined for you, it will always be destined for you. So if you feel like you are behind, if you feel like you're not on the right path, if you feel like you've taken the wrong road, just know that what is meant for you will not pass you. It's coming, my friend, in divine timing, at the right time, at the right place. Another quote that I said years ago, and as soon as I said it, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. I feel like it's so spot on. You are made of what you are made for. Now, as an astrologer, I believe that even more than I ever did. I said that quote years before I was an astrologer. I was coaching, and now I know it to be true because I look at a birth chart. I see all of the gifts, all of the shadows, all of the fated events, all of the destiny, and I know that that person is made of the stardust that they needed to be made of for their purpose, for their fate, for their destiny. So for example, with me and this ninth house stellium, for whatever reason, I'm meant to have this obsession with other countries, other cultures. I'm perhaps meant to live abroad. I'm meant to speak many languages, including the language of the stars. And I am apparently meant to be a teacher. I've always loved it. It's what I'm meant for, and it's what I'm made of. So remember, it's true for you also. Then the last one is a quote that I got from this wonderful 80-year-old Filipino woman that I met on an international flight recently. I was flying from Vienna, Austria to London, and then London back to the States. And on that flight from Vienna to London, I was sitting next to the most wonderful, magnetic, positive, abundant, generous woman ever. This Filipino woman named Betty. And she said to me, as just one of her many wise statements, she said, "You know, Devin, I don't plan my life because someone else is already planning for me." So we'll let that one sink in on its own time. I thank you for being here. I love you. I see you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead, subscribe on YouTube, give it a like, give it a comment. Feel free to follow on the Apple Podcast app or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave a review if you're listening to this in the audio form. And thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you would like to get a birth chart reading with me so that you can see for yourself if this stuff resonates, please do reach out. You can find me on my website, devinrochelle.com. You can message me on Instagram, which is just Devin_Rochelle_, or you can email me, devin.rochelle7@gmail.com. So I hope that I hear from you. Thank you for being here. What is for you will not pass you. Amor fati. Don't plan your life because someone else is already planning for you. And deep breaths, my friend. It's all happening in divine timing. Okay. Until next time, I wish you the greatest life you could ever imagine. Okay. Bye for now, my friends.